Thanks for staying up later and coming into the bizarre, mirrored world of the program. People are going to say, why is Bob here? Why is Carol Kane there?
I think Bob looks good in blue. He's got those beautiful blue eyes.
So you requested,
yeah,
since you would like me better at this background, you said, why don't you sit here, I'll sit there.
yeah.
And because this is a low-budget program with very little to risk and also very little to gain, we said, what the hell? So I'm sitting here and you're sitting there.
It's a change. It's good to have a change.
That pretty much explains it. So without further ado, here sits a woman who has been in Annie Hall and in Carnal Knowledge and in The Princess Bride and in Dog Day Afternoon and did a memorable bit of business opposite Andy Kaufman in Taxi. And so the question becomes, with all those credits behind you, including Emmys and an Academy Award nomination at the age of 22, why are you more or less a character actress and someone people associate with cameo roles or smaller bits of business that are always well received but aren't top billing?
That's the question, eh? Well, I think, you know, like, I think of Bette Davis as our greatest character actress, because she didn't do that thing that they did at that time where a star would play a certain kind of role and then all movies would be tailored for that kind of role. Every movie, you know, now Voyage Your Little Foxes, whatever, she was a completely different person. But in those days, I think movies were more a study of different kinds of people. I think they investigated people more. They weren't so much big plot-oriented things. And I think, so the kind of roles I think I would play as a star, if I was starring, I think just aren't around too much now. You know, I've been fortunate to have some lovely roles, and recently in the Lemon Sisters, my friend Diane Keaton gave me the opportunity to play a great role, or Hester Street or whatever. But I think that, you know, since I don't just play a type. I like to metamorphosize. That's what interests me.
You've got really strong feelings about having worked with Jack Nicholson. He went out of his way to be helpful to you, didn't he?
I was, you know, a bit of a baby, that is to say, and maybe a bit, I don't know. When we worked together, I was 17, you know, so he was very kind. And then
this is in Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah, ushered me in, and then so did Mike Nichols, and they were very nice to me. And then I worked with him again in The Last Detail. And, you know, Jack knows a tremendous amount about film technique, as well as his craft as an artist, you know. And I knew nothing at all. I mean, I had some instincts, you know, but he would tell me what to watch. And, in fact, he told me watch Bette Davis, learn about eyes, you know, how to use eyes on film. In fact, he said, watch Bette Davis and Peter Lorre, I hate to tell you. And then he would do little things like I mentioned to your researcher, which that, for instance, on The Last Detail, there was a scene in which he was in the room with myself and Randy Quaid and Otis Young, and we made a deal, a money deal. I was a hooker, if you recall, and then he had to leave the room, but the scene had to keep going on, and I was supposed to close the door, but only a certain amount, you know, because the camera still had to see in and everything. And I just couldn't get this into my body physically, you know. So I thought, well, I slam the door, then I come back. And I couldn't stop myself from slamming the door every take. And Jack would just, you know, say his lines, leave the room, wait for me to slam the door, which he knew I was going to do every time, and just stand there very calmly through the whole rest of the take, off screen, holding the door. You know, and he never said, Whitey, you're a moron or anything, you know. He just did it, and gentle, you know, by example. I learned that from him, and I learned that those things can be fun, you know, and they are part of the craft of movie making. They're not like, I'm an actress, how can you possibly expect me to think of, you know, the technical side? Well, Jack loves that side. Obviously, he's a wonderful director, and, you know, I think started out very early on through him and Mike as thinking of the camera as my partner, you know, instead of some threatening sort of object out there that was eavesdropping. And that's very helpful when you're going to be living with it.
Let's backtrack, since so much spun off of Hester Street. For those who haven't seen it, or it's been a while, who need a refresher course, you were just 22 when you did it. You got an Oscar nomination for it, and you played the role of a Russian Jewish immigrant who follows her husband to America in the early 1900s, meets him along with their small son in New York, speaks no English, and he's very into becoming Americanized. And she's this extremely innocent and disoriented character. Amazing that that movie took hold the way it did. Shot in black and white, a good portion of it with subtitles, and yet, for those who saw it, it really left a lasting impression.
I know. I think it's amazing, too. I think it spoke to so much of our past. You know, I mean, most Americans, I guess, were immigrants at one time, you know, and I think that this really captured that period and that struggle to belong, and that whole exploration of the disappointment of the streets not being paved with gold, you know, people going after a dream in the most phenomenally brave way. People coming over on the boat, not speaking English. My grandmother came over and opened an English school, and she didn't even really speak English, you know. She started teaching, you know. And the courage of that is unimaginable to most of us today, and I think so that movie really captured that in a wonderful way. And then the fact that the character that I play, which is, I guess, sort of the central character, is a survivor in a way that we could all be proud of. You know, she's doesn't cause anyone any harm or damage. She doesn't step on anyone, but she lives and she makes life good for her child. And I think, you know, it's such an American, even though it's about someone who speaks no English in the beginning, it is such an American story in a way, don't you think?
Did the circumstances of your childhood help to shape your sensibility as an actress?
Well, I mean, since they shaped all my sensibilities, I guess, you know, that's what I bring to my work. You know, I mean, they've made me what I am today, as it were.
The reason why I'm asking is you were only 17 or 18 when you played the hippie girlfriend of Art Garfunkel in Carnal Knowledge. And as I understand it, shortly before that, maybe 4 or 5 years before that, your parents went through what turned out for you to be a traumatic divorce. And then shortly after that, you're into an acting career with major stars, with Jack Nicholson and others, and in situations that had romantic and sexual overtones.
Well, I think that probably, you know, throwing back to childhood, when I was very young, I saw a play. This is kind of a cliche, but it was the truth in my life. I saw a play, I looked up on the stage, and I thought, you know, there it is. There's my home. That's where I want to be. I had a sense, which has turned out to be true, that I would be free on stage and happy on stage. And probably, you know, I don't know, maybe if my family life had been a little more comfortable, maybe I wouldn't have had that dream. I don't know. I just don't know, you know, because it wasn't other than it was. And I became very fixated very early on the fact that I had to do that. And so, yes, when my parents separated and whatever, I did, you know, sort of torture them into letting me come here to New York and start auditioning as soon as possible and start working. And it was wonderful for me. It was... for me, it's an education. I mean, every job I do, I learn about something different, and I've met the most wonderful people, and so I don't know what threw me into it exactly, but whatever it wasn't bad, you know.
So you had to learn Yiddish to be in Hester Street, but you had to learn a non-existent language, Latka's language, to be his bride in Taxi. How did you learn that?
Well, I badgered Andy, you know, for weeks about teaching me this language, and to him that was so peculiar because he just said, well, you know, it's just like children. You open your mouth and you speak Russian. It's like when you were a child and you opened your mouth and you spoke Russian and you didn't worry about whether you knew the words or not. That's how simple it was for Andy. I said, Andy, that may be okay for you, but this is, you know, a little harder for me. And I wanted to get his rhythm. I didn't want it just to be some arbitrary other made-up language. I wanted it to be Andy's. And I don't know if he was aware of how specific his rhythm was. Anyway, so he was very kind. I think he thought that it was kind of pathetic, but he, you know, let me, you know, spend a lot of time watching him. He showed me a lot of tapes. And he took me, and then the most fun thing we did was that we had a date to go to dinner, and it was Andy's idea that we would go someplace where nobody knew us. And so I went up to his house and we were going to go out, and he said, so I thought we'd go to Mexico. And we were in LA, you know, and I thought, okay, you know, I mean, I really want to be dedicated to my craft, and if the guy wants to go to Mexico, I'll try. And then, you know, as the evening wore on, I sort of said, well, I guess if we're going to Mexico, you know, we better go. And he looked at me like I was out of my mind. You know, Mexico, we're not going to Mexico. People never knew when Andy was joking. It was impossible to tell. And he took me to a Chinese restaurant in LA, and he made me speak to the waiters only in that language. I told him beforehand, you know, privately what I wanted, and then when the waiter came, I had to order it through him, you know, in that language, so that I got used to speaking it out in public and had to speak it for a while, you know, several hours, and you know, it was really a good idea.
Now, was it just rhythm and sound that he went on, or did he get to a point where he was so sophisticated in this language that he had made up that he would, in fact, use the same sounds to represent specific words?
Yeah, there weren't like combinations of things that represented words, but there were a couple words that emerged, like yaktabe was ass, I believe it was, you know.
Yaktabe?
Yeah. And everybody on the set knew yaktabe. So if somebody, if he came in doing the language, which I can't do anymore, and then slipped in a yaktabe, you'd know that he was swearing. He was upset, you know. A few things like that. But there wasn't a little phonetic language worked out. And by the way, all our lines were written in the script in English. We knew what we were saying. We weren't just, you know, meandering. We had intentions. We knew what we were saying.
How close did you or other members of the cast get to Andy Kaufman? Because other people have told me that there was an element of the stage Andy Kaufman in him every moment, and he would keep people back on their heels. They couldn't tell for sure if he was joking or not. We
were not, you know, really chums in that sense. We were close. Co-workers, we had, I think, respect and tremendous affection for each other, but we didn't hang out, you know. And I didn't, like you're saying, I didn't know Andy too well, in that I couldn't figure him. Like, I know that he was very, I think he was very hurt by that Saturday Night Live poll.
Yeah, when they took a poll, should he or should he not ever be allowed back on the show, and by a narrow margin the public voted that he shouldn't be.
Now, I think it was, well, I think it was crummy that they did that, but you know, the jokes that Andy staged, he staged, you know, he was an artist, he was a singular performance artist, and these things were well worked out that he did, his marriage or his wrestling or whatever it was that he was, or his bongo thing, or his, you know, but I think that it wasn't the same if people pulled a joke on him, because his things weren't jokes, they were little performance pieces, you know, and I don't know for sure, but I don't think he took a joke that was a rejection as very funny, as none of us would, you know. And I think because he was so extreme in his is his ability to take on a character and create a situation and never break, no matter what.
Right.
People thought, well, this guy is invulnerable, but he wasn't. He was quite vulnerable and always very sweet, I must say, to me. And I felt bad for him sometimes because I know that he didn't want to be married or anything on the show, and I understand that. I mean, he created a whole world and a whole character, and all of a sudden, you know, this woman's coming in on a pass with the same character. Not the same character at all, but the same elements.
A quick capsule on American Dreamer. You play the kind of, for lack of a better word, ditzy assistant.
Oh, find a better word.
Do we have a better word than ditzy? Send out the search party.
I play Lillian, and she's Bob Uryck's Gal Friday. I like that term because it makes me think of Rosalind Russell and all those great movies. And there is something in the style which makes me think of that, too. And it's wonderful writing. I've just been really lucky again because I have Gary Goldberg, Susan Seeger, Brad Hall, wonderful writers, and I think it's unusual and smart, you know, and I have fun with my character, which is important.
Let's go back to Annie Hall. You were Allison Porchnick, Woody Allen's first wife in the film. What are your recollections about working on that one?
I had a scene where I had to kiss him, and because I thought of him as, I guess I just thought of him as a legend or something in our own time. I was sort of like, I didn't know if it was all right to actually kiss him on the mouth, you know. I thought, well, maybe I was supposed to fake it and kiss him here or something. Yeah. And I mean, it was crazy, you know. But there's certain people that I just admire so much, you know, that it's hard to just sort of look them in the eye and, you know, accept that you're in the same room with them.
So yes, folks, Carol Kane does miss Taxi, but she's rhapsodic about American Dreamer, 10:30 Eastern Time, Saturday nights after Carol Burnett, right here on NBC.
I'm having a great time, and I say goodnight to George and Lola, my doggies.
Your doggies are up later watching the program?
Yes, they stay. I trained them to stay up late to watch American Dreamer, and then why not stay up late enough to watch Later?
They're going to be confused if they're regular viewers. Why was he here? Can I have my chair back tomorrow?
No.
I got to stay here?
Yeah, stay there. Sit.
Tune in. Heel. Tune in tomorrow night to see if she makes it stick. See you later.